Between big software changes and some key hardware upgrades, the OnePlus 8T series looks like being a pretty interesting update to two of our favourite phones of 2020. Take a sec to subscribe to Android Central so you don't miss our hands-on coverage of these phones when they land, and we'll jump right in. So over the years, OnePlus has been a little inconsistent about the kind of changes that come with a T-model phone. Sometimes there are big design updates, other times there are just modest internal spec upgrades. The biggest change we know about in the OnePlus 8T is that it'll likely see the biggest upgrade to the dash charge spec in years. OnePlus has recently certified a 65-watt charger with German regulators, and there are also hints of a new faster dash charging spec in the recently released OxygenOS developer preview. We've already seen 65-watt charging in many phones this year, most notably from Oppo in its Find X2 Pro flagship. Oppo, like OnePlus, is part of the BBK group of companies, and these guys do tend to share technology among themselves. In the Find X2 Pro, Oppo's 65-watt charger is able to restore its 4200 mAh battery to full in just 38 minutes. If OnePlus does push its charging speed up to 65 watts, you can pretty much guarantee the battery capacity will be virtually unchanged, at least in the OnePlus 8T Pro. That's because battery capacity versus charging speeds is always kind of a tug of war, so if you found a way to improve one in a phone of the same size, chances are the other is staying the same. As for wireless charging, I'd be very surprised to see it push past the existing 30-watt wireless warp charge spec, especially if OnePlus wants to avoid decreasing the battery capacity to compensate. It's possible it may find a way to bring wireless charging to the smaller 8T model though, which would fill one of the major feature gaps of the OnePlus 8. Besides charging, most of the solid information we have in the OnePlus 8T series comes from details leaked out through benchmark apps. In late July, a OnePlus device with the model number KB2001 showed up with a Snapdragon 865 series chip and 8GB of RAM. Nothing too earth-shattering there, but since the Snapdragon 865 Plus shows up just the same as the 865 in these benchmarks, given the history of the series, it's pretty likely that it will be the Plus used in these devices. That means higher clock speeds, quicker gaming, but mostly just bragging rights. Seriously, don't expect to notice much of a performance increase versus the 8 Pro. One of the areas where there's always room for improvement though is the cameras, even though the OnePlus 8 Pro does have an excellent main camera. The biggest clue we have here comes from references in the OnePlus camera app around a 64 megapixel mode, suggesting a future OnePlus phone will use such a high-res sensor. The main candidate is Sony's IMX686, also used in the Zenfone 7 Pro. That's an upgrade from the sensor of the OnePlus 8, but it would still be inferior to the IMX689 which is used in the OnePlus 8 Pro. So one possibility is the 8T will get this new sensor, while the 8T Pro might continue with the same main sensor as the 8 Pro. The other, more interesting possibility is that it could be used as a replacement for the telephoto camera in the 8T Pro. That's pretty tantalizing because, if true, it would basically just see OnePlus replicating Samsung's approach in the Galaxy S20, allowing further hybrid zoom because of the sheer resolution of that sensor. OnePlus's telephoto camera is due an upgrade, having been basically unchanged for the past couple of generations, and it's easily the weakest area of an otherwise really great camera experience. What's more, I think we can agree the largely pointless color filter sensor in the OnePlus 8 Pro and the 2-megapixel macro in the 8 both need to be replaced with something actually useful in the new models. Like I said at the start of this video, the OnePlus T series of devices are a little bit of a wild card sometimes, and that's clearly visible in their designs through the years, sometimes being basically a carbon copy of their predecessor and sometimes looking radically different. Given that OnePlus seems to have found its groove with the design language of the 8 series, I wouldn't predict any major design overhauls in the 8T or 8T Pro. Instead, I think any visual differences would more likely come from new colours or new finishes, and we've already seen OnePlus experimenting with some pretty wild iridescent colours in the past. It's pretty certain the OnePlus 8T series will be the first to launch out of the box with OxygenOS 11, which is OnePlus's upcoming Android 11 based software. We already covered this in depth in another video, but basically it's a pretty big visual overhaul, perhaps the biggest ever for OnePlus's software, and the visual design, which a lot of people have compared to Samsung's One UI, has proven to be a little controversial. Last year's OnePlus 7T series was among the first to ship with Android 10, so we should probably expect the 8T with Android 11 to land within a few weeks of the new version of Android dropping. That, by the way, we're currently expecting for around September 8th. So that's all we know for now on the OnePlus 8T. Hit the comments to let us know what you'd like to see from the next generation of OnePlus flagships, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our coverage of the 8T and 8T Pro when they do eventually arrive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.